Alright, we want to take a look now at how to make our enemy shoot back at us in the invaders project. We have our program. One thing, if you haven't done this yet, depending on where you're picking this up, this video, different parts will look different depending on what you're looking at. I'm not taking us through systematically necessarily because I'm trying to give branches and options. But anyway, we definitely are going to need the random this time. So if you did not import the random functions, you should do that now. The next thing we want to do is we want to think about our variables. If our enemy is going to be able to shoot, it's going to have its own missile. So if you think about it, and you come down here and you look at these three, our missile has a location. Well, so does the enemy missile need a location. Our missile, we track and see whether it's on the screen or not. Well, we should do the same thing for our enemy. And our player can pull a trigger. That's when he hits the space bar. And we can actually simulate the same thing with some, it's not really artificial intelligence, but that's what we'll call it. When does he want to pull the trigger? And so we need that one as well. So we really just need those three. We could take this and we could say, for simplicity's sake right now, I'm going to call it the E missile location. We'll start it at the top of the screen. We're going to say the E missile on, back to spelling missile incorrectly. Okay. We're going to say E missile on is false, and we are going to now make an enemy trigger that is also false. So those three things will trigger or handle the variables that we need for this. Let's go ahead and go to our draw statement. If you haven't done this before, you can of course collapse our functions. So here's all the functions we have so far, and I'm going down to the draw function. So I'm going to open up draw. And right here we have in our draw the drawing our good guy, drawing our enemy, drawing our own missile. So we want to draw the enemy missile. So again, if it's on the screen, and only if it's on the screen, do we want to draw. Now, we are stealing a lot of ideas here from our own missile, and why not? It worked. So if you think about this, it's exactly the same type of line. It's got a location. It's also got a spot where we have to draw to. So this is like the starting location or the top corner of it, if you want to think about it that way, or bottom corner of it. How big do we want it? Well, let's make it 20 again, just like this one. It should look exactly the same. Maybe you want to change its color so that you can tell the difference. So maybe we'll make it red. That would be cool. You know what? Just to make it bright, I'm going to make it yellow. So that's the drawing of it. It's exactly like the top, but we have an E missile location, an E missile location on the X, and an E missile location on the Y, and a different color. Down here, we have, of course, all the different things that we're doing. So we're moving the player can shoot, we're moving the missile, we're now moving the enemy, so why don't we do this? The enemy can shoot, and, wow, I don't know why that's like that. We want to move the enemy missile. So we've kind of got, everything we can do, he can do too. And then we collide together. Sounds epic. All right, we take that draw, we shrink it down. You can go back and pause the video if you need to see it any longer than that, of course. And, do I add a it into one of these? No, it's time to make a new function because we just told it that we had a new function. Two new functions. One is the enemy can shoot, and the other one, the missile. Ooh, did I call it E-move missile or move E-missile? Good, I called it move E-missile. Thank goodness. Now we can be inspired by our player's ability to shoot, right? In our player, we say, if the player has pulled the trigger, then and the missile's not already on, then we turn it on and we initialize its values. That's exactly what we want to do for the enemy. We want to say, okay, the things that we're going to change here, we could have the enemy trigger change. We could have the E, keep capitalizing that. The E missile on could change because it could turn on, and the E missile location could change because we need to set its location. If the enemy trigger, if you want to combine these for simplicity's sake, you can. So two things have to be true. This must be set to true. This must be set to false. And then we just do the same thing we did before. And we set it to true. Anybody else copying and pasting here, that would be a good idea, because it's so similar. Now, of course, we don't want to set it equal to the player's location. We want to set it equal to the enemy's location. The X value would be the same, so it's the middle of the enemy. And the Y value would be the enemy's location. And now this is a little bit tricky. Here we want to shoot it at the top of the player, and here we want to shoot it at the bottom of the player. So we're going to just estimate 50 down below it. We might make an adjustment to that later. Now the only thing that we don't do, in our case, we hit the spacebar and it made the trigger happen. In the enemy's case, we have to decide how does the enemy know to shoot, and this is the function where that should happen, right? Enemy shoot. So let's say that we create a random number. So let's just say that we do if random integer from 1 to 100 equals 1. So we're going to make a random number and we're going to say, is it 1? Which means, you know, we have a 1 in 100%, 1% chance of the enemy deciding to shoot. If when we play this, we'll look in, you know, just for difficulty's sake, let's just say this doesn't happen often enough, we shrink it. Now he has a 1 in 50 chance. Happens too often, now he only has a 1 in 500 chance. You just play with that number until you get the shooting rate that feels right to you, that feels hard without being too hard, that kind of thing. So if that random number happens, then the enemy has pulled the trigger, which then you go down here and you say, ah, okay, he pulled the trigger. So we're good to go. That should work for our enemy shooting. Now we have to move our missile, and we might want to take a peek at how we did the move missile for the player. If the missile is on, we move the missile. If the missile reached the top of the screen, we turned it off, and we let the guy we let him do it again. So we can do the same thing down here. The things that might change are the location, the trigger, and the missile being on. I keep yawning, I apologize. So we have the E missile location, the enemy trigger, and the E missile on as our global variables. And we say if the missile is on, his location changes. Plus equals because he's moving down the screen instead of up the screen. Missile speed is a constant we defined at the beginning. If we want him to move faster or slower, you could kind of take that and say, you know what, move our speed, but then add 2, or you could say, you know what, ours is a little too fast, we want to make the enemy slow down, we could change it. We'll start with it just being the same speed as ours, but we could adjust that. You could set up a new constant too for like enemy missile speed if you wanted to, which then would let you change it at the top of the screen instead of hunting for it all the time. So here we could say, let's check and see if we've hit the bottom of the screen, which is of course height. So if it's greater than height, here we did less than 0, we want to do greater than height. The E missile on is set to false, and the enemy trigger is set to false, which means they can do it again. So that is really it to have him shoot. We've set up his ability to shoot, and we've moved the missile if he does decide to shoot. And we have our draw command, which draws it if it is on the screen. And I forgot a parenthesis somewhere. Okay. Right there. As students try to figure out why that, bad input move player. Well, move player is right here. Why is there bad input? Usually, often, not always, but often, if you get an error, it happened on the line above the error. If you've made a change to a program and you get an error, the error didn't happen in move player because move player hasn't been touched. That can't have gone wrong all of a sudden. So you say, what did I change? Oh, you know what? I changed this line, which is the line right above move player. So that's a quick sleuth of how to figure that out. And then, of course, I just looked right here. I see, oh yeah, that's a XY coordinate, but I didn't put the the parentheses at the end of that coordinate. So that is how I solved that problem. Now, we watch. Oh yeah, yellow bullet coming down at us. Now, what do we think about that location? Seems a little bit low to me. It's like shooting kind of well below where he should be. The way to change that is that the enemy's shooting where we initialize the location right here, this 50, I said that is one that we might need to change, right? You can walk it up. You could even, maybe I should have started with it really close to the location. Just as an aside, here's his X value. And I like the idea of him shooting, in this case, from the middle of the spaceship. But let's say you made an enemy with a gun and he was holding his gun in a particular location. Just making tiny changes to these things, moving them by little pixels, and testing and seeing what it looks like can make it look like it's coming out of a gun or out of a particular spot on the screen. So this initialization of where the enemy bullet appears is where you would play with that kind of thing. So now when it starts a little bit on him, but that's not bad. It kind of shows that he's the one shooting it. So that maybe is what we wanted to do all along. And then we have to think about, what do we think about the rate of his firing? Is it too often? Is it not often enough? And it's funny. This 1 in 100 chance means that sometimes he shoots right away, and sometimes he waits a while. Woo. Come on, come on. And that's not bad. Also, remember our ultimate goal is to get lots of bad guys on the screen. Until we have that, there's not a lot of reason to question this too much. We'll see how hard it is when we have 25 people shooting at us, right? We should do collisions right away because we've already explained collisions. We should be able to add them pretty easily. We have our enemy, we have our missile, and then we say, hey, did those things collide or not? For this next step, all we need to do is decide if our player and the enemy's missile have problems. So right away I can say, you know what, this missile piece is going to be exactly the same. So why don't I just take it again and this time change them all to E missiles. There are a few differences in the version of the program I'm working on now than what I did on the previous collision, which I was a lot cleaner and better in that one than this one. Some of you might recognize some of this stuff as being pretty clunky, and I fixed it. I have had problems saving, let's put it that way. I kind of forget sometimes to keep track of what code I'm working on, and I had to go back to a previous, worse, misspelled code base. So I apologize for that. I should have fixed it. I didn't realize it. Anyway, here we are saying our E-missile has these locations, which we didn't really change how our E-missile looked or anything, so that should work out just fine. I'm just going to quick throw the rest of my E's in here. Bonus points if you copied and pasted the E instead of retyping it. And then we have our player. Well, our player, and this is where some work I did in a previous one, I'm regretting that I lost it because I had some nice things here. I had a scale equals 7, and I had that my good scaled width equals my good width divided by the scale. Good scaled height equals my good height divided by the scale, which makes is about to make my life in collisions a bit easier, so I wanted to add that back in there. I should have the bad guys in there as well. So here's my enemy missile. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the sides, my edges for my player. Player top, player bottom, and so on. Maybe a copy and a paste here would not be out of the question. Whoa, look at that equal sign I put in there. That's bad. There we go. Player object. Player top. So you have to ask yourself, is it faster to just type it all out, or is it faster to copy and paste? And then sometimes you, either way I can see that you might make a mistake. So my player top is my player's location position 1 minus my good scaled height. And my player bottom is position 1 plus my good scaled height. My left, same thing, except it's position 0 with the width. And position 0 plus the width. Let me pause for a second, but you may want to hit pause. Take a look at that code and make sure you've got the edges of your enemy's missile and your player edges as well. Okay, so then we're going to write our collide, and just like the one above, it's quite easy once you get the edges, which is why I continue to insist that this is not a bad way to go. If our object hits the enemy's object, and the enemy's object is on the enemy missile object, of course. I'm just copying from here again. Okay, so he shot us. So now you can ask yourself, what are the types of things that happen if we get shot? And you can think of all sorts of fun coding opportunities that this might be involved in. Right now, we want to lose a life, right? So that's the biggest. We should probably print our lives on the screen too at some point so we can see that. Do we want our score to go? No. Do we want our enemy to turn off? No. It's not his fault that he killed us. The missile, how about we should turn off our the enemy's missile? How about the enemy's trigger? Yeah, if we should let him shoot again so he can try to kill us again. Anything else? Well, this raises an interesting question. Let's say that we get shot. Do we want our missile to turn off? Because I could see it where you shoot, but your bullet is already in existence, so you might shoot each other at the exact same moment, right? Your bullets are both passing each other in the night, and then on the way to their target, and then you hit each other. So if you like that idea, you could don't put this in. If you like the idea of kind of punishing the player, like, hey, you got killed, and therefore you should be, penalized, you might want to try that. One thing's for sure is no, we'll let the missile fly, and we'll assume that this takes care of other things. I was gonna say we could just make sure we turn off the player's ability to, like we want to make their trigger go back again, but we don't really want to. We'll wait for the bullet to either hit somebody or fly off the screen before they can shoot again. How about the player's location? In the original Space Invaders, the X value, he starts on the edge of the screen every time. So you could kind of see yourself doing that, making sure that his location resets. You may even, when we get fancy, you put in a little explosion in here, maybe pause the game for a minute so we can get settled back down. And sometimes if you just respawn them without any sort of waiting time, it causes some anxiety. People aren't ready. They expect a little delay there. So some other things that we could put into there. But for right now, I think this is good. It's good enough to test. No, it's not. These things right here, they used to not be in here, so we should add them to our global list. Right? We now can do lives. We now can do the enemy missile. And we now can do the enemy trigger. So those things can change. We have to globalize them. Okay, we're going to hit play. He's shooting. I better go get in that bullet's way. Oh, almost got shot. Come on. Oh, yeah, there it goes. Woo, I got shot in. As soon as I got shot, it freaked out. That's interesting. Ah, yes. Freezes me up. It doesn't let me move again. So that's a problem, isn't it? What about the player's speed? Does that need to get reset? That's interesting. Did I call it player 1 speed in this one, or player speed? I'm worried that what's happening is that it's continuing to trigger. Well, you know what? Let's take care of one little detail, because it might give us a clue as to what's going on. We need to add our ability to draw score. Draw text. The location to draw that. The font size to draw that in, and the color. So as long as I'm getting this function correct, what I'm curious about, now this is, well, I'll say that. What I'm curious about is if my lives keep going down, then it thinks that we keep getting hit by the bullet, which sometimes can happen, and there's a little fix for it, but I just want to see if that's the problem. We draw this one at 50-50. We want to draw it on the same Y value so they're next to each other, but we want to move this one over significantly, so we'll try 450. I should put a space in those. Alright, shoot me. No, my life went down. Oh, this time I can move again, so that happened. Wasn't the big error that I thought it was, apparently. Now, here's something you might see as wrong. I can't just have lives be negatives. I have to actually have a game over. Oh, that's a bummer. Well, I'm down to -6 lives, so I guess I have my bullets working, and I can now determine if that was too hard or too easy as I play it, test it a little bit. Go get somebody who's never played it before and say, hey, try this game, because I can shoot them and they can shoot me. And at least then you'll know if things are working from a different person's perspective. See you next time.